Welcome to Roll to Hit Gaming's 50 Favorite Games.
Today we're going to go through numbers 20 and 11.
Now, we're not saying these are the best games in the world. We put this list together as our favorite 50. We're just saying we like to play these games more than we like to play the ones from previous episodes. For Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Chip.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Lucas. When we started this video series off 3 episodes ago, we talked about how we made this list. And one of my rules was I had to own it to put it on the list because I didn't feel like if I didn't bother to own it, it could have been one of my favorite games. I said, but with one exception. I've since remedied that, but my number 20 is Five Tribes. Yeah. We played this last year at BGG-Con, and I'd always been afraid of it because I didn't think I would see the Moncala thing. And I did, and it was an amazing time. Mm-hmm. Every piece of that game fits together perfectly. I'd put this one in the masterpiece category. I loved it that much. So, number 20, Five Tribes.
Definitely. From the Moncala all the way to the Djinns and their special powers, it keeps you on your toes the whole way through.
Yeah, I haven't stopped thinking about this game since we played it at BGG-Con. And we waited so long to play it. Mm-hmm. This year was hard, right? Last year I kind of felt like I was stretching to put my list together at some points, you know?
Right.
This year, it's like, you know, from 40 up, they're just smash hits with me. There's none that every one of them is just a perfect game to me. So, yeah, that's a great title. Joe, what do you got?
Well, for my number 20, I chose Fleet. Fleet's a card hand management type game, and basically you're trying to build a fleet for victory points, and with this fleet you purchase licenses and you go out fishing, be it for crabs or other fish, shrimp, and it's just a taste of that of going out into the Arctic and doing something I've never done before, you know. And actually it was interesting, and it was a puzzle, and I really enjoyed it, and that was Fleet.
Yeah, this is one of those small box games, and you might pass it by on the shelf. A, you're not interested in a theme, and B, it's a small box little card game. What could be in there? There is a ton of game in here. It's a very Euro style deal, and it's all based around. It's almost like an economy deal. It's based around the different licenses that you have for going out and catching a fish. There's a lot of game in this little box. Good choice.
And I really have to thank Chip for that one, because he's the one who got it for me as a present.
I gave you guys that for your anniversary, and I still hadn't got to play it with you. Hint, hint. I'm going to keep... What were you
We're good. We're bogarting it.
Yes, you are.
You can't have it.
You're being stingy with it.
Yes.
I'm going to keep up the fishing theme. My number 20 is a crossover with Lucas, and that's going to be Coldwater Crown by our friends at Bellwether Games. Guys, if I know that the idea of a fishing game, a fishing board game might not seem all that great to you, but the game itself is really cool, and the theme for me really comes out. This is just a really good game. It's a solid action selection game, and the way that you manage your bait to catch the fish is sort of a modified Moncala. I don't really know what to call it. It's not Moncala, but it's very, you're taking gems away and trying to eliminate your space so that you catch the fish. Really fun. And if you haven't tried it, you think maybe, the theme or the idea of a fishing game sounds bad, I'm saying don't sell it short. Play this game if you get an opportunity to, and I think you'll really like it.
It's very thematic. I mean, every piece of it, the bait and the casting it out to catch your fish, and the different trophies for, the most species or the biggest catch or the highest weight, and all the different locations. It's fishing, and they do it so well.
Very fun. I agree 100%.
Those are going to be our number 20s.
So for my number 19, I chose a game. It was basically for my oldest boy. He loves video games, and he loves playing League of Legends. So when they built this game called Mechs versus Minions, he really was interested in it. And he isn't interested in playing the board games as much as we are. So being able to meshed together. His passion for video games and our passion for board gaming was amazing. And we got to actually sit down and play together as a family, all of us. It's a great game. It's program movement. And basically you're an inventor and you built this little mechanized robot that you ride. And there's all these little minions that are mobing around trying to, is that a word?
I don't know, you just verbed it too.
I've verbed it. But you're out there trying to destroy them, and each scenario is a different puzzle going against these minions, and you program your movement. It's just really fun, and he really got into it, and that just made my day. And that's Mechs versus Minions.
Yeah, there's a cool story that unfolds as you go through. It's not so much legacy, because you could just pack everything back in the envelopes and do it again or play it with somebody new. But it kind of tells a narrative as you go through the campaign that's included in it. I got to tell you, I saw, first of all, a video game property that I had no interest in, programmed movement, and these little crazy things on crazy mechs, and I was just out. Don't make that mistake. There's a lot of really fun game in that box.
Yeah, it's fun. And the interesting thing is the way it was rolled out to the marketplace. It did not go through normal channels, but in doing so, the company was able to offer it at a really market-friendly price, And there's a lot of game in that box for $75.
Yeah,
so
there is.
You get your hands on it. And the quality of the minis and everything are just really, really good. So my number 19 is going to be a game you guys have yet to play, but I would like you to experience it, and it's Kingdom Death Monster. Now, Lucas makes fun of the name. Yeah, the name is
terrible name.
Kind of crazy, right? It has a colon in it, so maybe that helps a little bit. But
after which word?
It's Kingdom Death, Monster.
Okay.
And I think they just named it that way because the box is, one of the biggest boxes in board gaming right now. So, of course, there are recent titles that are challenging it for size. But one of the most interesting, now the theme of this game is very dark, so this is more of an adult-themed game just for content. But really, the thing that draws me to this game, for me, is the uniqueness of the campaign play. You build this village, you have a group of survivors that are going to evolve through the story and could die along the way, probably will die. It's not a game where in other dungeon crawls you get attached to one character. You're attached to your village and you want your village to survive. And you may play, one character this time and play another character this other time, however. But the way that they've created an AI for the monsters is really innovative. They have a deck, and as the deck comes out, it's going to tell you the actions that the monsters take to attack your players. But as the monster takes damage, those cards are its life force. Okay. So the cards get discarded out of the AI deck, and, sometimes you get lucky, and the really hard attacks that the monster has gets discarded as damage. The other times, you get really unlucky, and the only thing left in your deck, it's like the monster is getting more vicious and more dangerous as it's getting wounded. And man, when those happen, it's really, the anxiety really gets up, and you're like, oh, I hope I make it through it. It's a really cool game. The theme is wild. The price tag on it was insane because I didn't back the first Kickstarter. But the game itself is really appealing to me, and I'd like you guys to try it when you get a chance. So that's Kingdom Death Monster.
The miniatures are like very, huge, like grandiose, but they have a little bit of a grotesqueness to it.
Yes, they do.
So it's hard for me to paint one of those, and I still haven't done it yet.
The creator, Adam Poots, I think, is in the Stephen King kind of mindset. And I've always said there's something weird going on in Stephen King's mind that we can't even see through his writing, right? We wouldn't want to get exposed to what's in there, and I think the designer is a little bit
same way.
a little bit like that. There is grotesqueness to his creatures.
I don't know anything about it other than it's got a goofy name. I haven't played it, so I can't really comment. My number 19, I've always been interested in, I've said this before on the channel, I'm an American history buff. I've always been interested in politics, and I suppose I should mean historical politics, not this garbage that goes on today. And my number 19 is going to be 1960, The Making of the President, because that electoral system is one of the most intriguing parts of the whole thing to me. I love how that works. It almost feels like you're playing a Euro game to become president, right? So you've got to score the points in this state and the points in this state. So that plays out exceptionally well in this one, and that particular election worked because it was so close. And, it had memorable events that occurred during the election, the lazy shave, and you had the civil rights movement, everything going on. All of these things come into play through your event cards. And, it was one of the first games I ever played where you open it up, there's a whole box full of blocks, and you're like, what is all of this, right? But it really made me fall in love with the idea of a box full of blocks, too. So it really works on every level. There's a new version that's been printed out. I have the older one. I actually prefer that art on that one a little better, so I'm going to keep with that one. But you can now get your hands on it again. It is a great little game, 1960, The Making of the President.
And as I understand, the rules didn't change from the reprint.
I watched a walkthrough and I couldn't tell. Maybe a little tweakage, but not drastically.
Some FAQ stuff.
What I find really interesting is that it's still 19. It's still a big game for you. I expected, as the newer games we played over this year, that maybe that would have shifted more. And
to be the man, you got to beat the man. And beat this man.
So it's a strong title.
That's going to be our number 19s.
Number 18 for me is going to be a game that Lucas and I really enjoy, and Joe not so much. It's Food Chain Magnate from Splotter. I really like this game, and I don't care what people say about the art. I like the art. It's the old school diner style art. The main part of the game that I really enjoy is putting together your organization of different workers and things like that. We still have a little bit to explore in this game. I think we really haven't gone down the line of opening up new branches for our restaurants. We've been focusing a lot on the advertisement and the organization. So I think there is a lot more for us to get into this game, but it's hard to get it to the table now because, Joe, you want to talk about it?
Okay. So as far as the art, I do. I love the nostalgic diner look. The board, though, is very plain. It's just basically a grid because you're building a neighborhood and, you have to put it within the grid. What I didn't like about this game was that it was so mean. It was terribly mean. And it's only because, this is my food chain franchise, and I want you to leave me alone while I'm trying to build up my little thing. And there's just strategies you can use that can undercut or underbid your prices and stuff like that. And it was just extremely aggravating for me. So it's a personal choice not to play it. So that's just me.
I'm actually gonna differ with her on a couple points. I don't like the art, and I'll tell you one.
A lot of people don't.
I'll tell you one of the hang-ups I really have on it. I don't really care to get into numbers, but the price tag on this one and all Splotter games is pretty high.
Yeah.
When you consider that all that's in there's a bunch of paper.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. Does the base game come with the roughly in the shape of wooden pieces? But I mean, you talk about lowest common denominator. You have this brown thing that is somewhat round, and that represents a burger, right? We've jazzed ours up a little bit so that it looks better. But yeah, I really don't like the visual appeal. But what I do like is the incredibly deep game that is in that box. It does have some meanness, and that can be frustrating. But I feel like there is, this is one of those 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle type deals, right? I feel like there's a whole lot in there. And we've only played it a handful of times. We definitely need to play that one some more.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll move on. My number 18 is going to be a crossover, I think, with Chip, and that's Shadows over Camelot. That was our intro to the whole trader mechanic thing. And I know that there are folks out there who are like, yeah, you're putting together poker hands. It's not thematic. I can't help you with exercising your own imagination. So I think it's thematic, and I have a great time every time we play this one. It's a long one, so it's going to take you all night. But you're cooperatively, maybe, working to defend Camelot against the Picts and the Saxon, and at the same time you're going on the quest for the Holy Grail, or you're going to fight the Green Knight, or you're going to fight the dragon. All of these things work together. The only little hitch that I have with it is the whole I can't tell you what number I have. And I feel like me saying, low, mid, high, and high is just kind of, why make me go through that effort? Why don't you just let me say I have a 4? I don't understand that part, since we are working cooperatively. I think it maybe goes back to an older school thought in cooperative games, because if you'll remember, originally in Pandemic, you didn't lay your cards that you have out in front of you. They were your hand, and you weren't supposed to share that information. And now in the newer printings, it tells you to just put them out in front of you. So maybe that was just kind of an older school thinking there, or maybe it helps the trader mechanic, and Pandemic doesn't have that one. But to me, it doesn't matter. The trader mechanic doesn't add to or subtract from this one. The rest of the game is what really makes it. I could care less whether we do or don't. I suppose that tension adds a little bit to it about whether we do or don't, because you're like, we don't need another catapult, and they do it anyways. Okay. But I think it's a great game. Number 18, Shadows over Camelot.
Yes, that is a pretty nifty game there. It's been so long since we played it, though, because, it's been...
That's because it takes all night.
It's been a while since we've gotten together, so I'd like to play it again for nostalgia's sake. We did have a good time when we did play it, so I think we'd have a good time again.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, for my number 18, I chose Yido. Yido is my preference over Lords of Waterdeep, which they're somewhat similar, different theme as far as Dungeons and Dragons type setting and, Japanese. And Yido is a little bit meaner, but I think that's why I like it so much, is because it takes effort to be that mean to somebody. You have to build up enough resources in order to play those cards, or the right situation has to unfold in front of you before you can really assassinate someone else's character. And it was just, the theme is so all-encompassing, and I just really enjoyed all the thinky bits to it, and that's Yido.
Yeah, I like it too, but I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. I have these things too, right? So I don't suppose I'm necessarily picking on you, because, I'll say that game is completely random, get it out of my house, and then the next game we play is completely random, and I love it. It's one of those things. You hated on Foonshade Magnate just to pick a go about it being mean, and you just sold part of this one's selling point as being mean. That's interesting to me.
Well, it takes more effort to be mean. Kind of like,
you have to build
it takes quite a bit of effort to be mean, Foonshade.
Irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I undercut your hamburgers, okay? I apologize.
It hurt my feelings, okay? And it was the lemonade.
That's our number 18s. I'll kick off number 17 with a crossover with Chip, and that's going to be Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of our, probably our first foray into Euro games. And like we said when we talked about it before, this is just an evergreen title to me. I like everything about it. I don't even know that we really need to harp on it. Go play it if you haven't. If you do, cherish the copy that you have. Number 17, Puerto Rico.
I don't really have anything else to say about that one, because I believe it was in the last group.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those where I thoroughly enjoyed it when I played it way back when, but I've kind of gone past that now. But I've got a little bit of controversy.
I have a little influence on what we play.
That's true.
So I think for the next 15 games, I'm going to throw down Puerto Rico.
I'm in.
Well, okay, but only if the next 15 are my number 17.
I'm not committing to that.
So, number 17 was a big shock for some people last year when we did this, because it was number 5.
Oh, I'll play this game. You just put it at 5.
It's no longer 5. It has fallen because other games have made it to the list much higher. But that is Camp Grizzly. I absolutely adore this game. Basically, with Camp Grizzly, you're a bunch of campers out at, sleepaway camp, and there's a mass murderer running around trying to get you. And it's a cooperative game. You're trying to get to the finale, basically, and stay away from the mass murderer. The art and it is good. I mean, I really enjoy the art on it. It's not it's almost like not quite cartoony, but sort of cartoony. I don't know. Comic bookish. Yeah. But it's just a ton of fun, and it has a lot of flavor. Now, some of it may be a little risque on some of the writings on the cards. It's not a kid's game. But it's thoroughly enjoyable. I mean, we grew up in the era of watching, the old Jason movies and stuff. And it fits right into there. Even with the art, it's like 70s art. So I love Camp Grizzly, and I can't wait to play it again. And it's my number 17.
Yeah, I mean, I like the game too. I wouldn't have put it at 5, but 17, that's fine. I like it a lot more than last Friday. So yeah,
agreed.
I wish we got the rest of our Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm sitting here thinking as she's going on it. First of all, there's not only 16 games in the history of existence better than this one. 17 is still crazy, but it's a good game. I do have fun playing it. It's the best one of these games like that I've played that captures that 80s slasher style feel, right? And I'm a huge fan of that genre. This one all comes down to just, and I suppose it's tainted by just, easily the worst Kickstarter experience I ever had, and I'm including in that Robotech, which, I didn't care about the game anymore by the time it delivered. This one to me is worse than that. Yeah. And it's a good game. That's what's really frustrating about it. There is a pretty good game in there. But.
I love it. I love it.
My number 17, is that what we're on? 17. Yes. Mm-hmm. My number 17 is going to be one, as I said, I'm going to be surprised if it doesn't show up on y'all's list. That's the Pandemic series. And I have to group them because I haven't played them all, but for the ones I have played, I absolutely love them. Regular Pandemic, Pandemic the Cure, Pandemic Legacy, Pandemic Cthulhu, of all things. I still need to play Iberia. I think that one's going to be fun. But I just like the series. You're trying to battle viruses that are trying to sweep over the world, and it's a tough game. And we got into this. We started with the original Pandemic, and it really kicked the crap out of us for a number of plays until our final true victory. And it was so sweet, right? Because we had been beaten so many times that when victory finally came, we're just jumping through the ceiling. So. Really like the game, and again, the Pandemic, hands down is going to be an evergreen title. It's been so successful. If you haven't tried it, you're in a severe minority. Go out and give it a whirl. I think you'll like it.
More to come.
Probably so. I was just sitting here thinking, we've talked about years ago we played Power Grid. One time, everybody hated it universally. And, we've made the comment recently that I don't think we were ready as gamers to play that title because we hadn't played a Euro game before. We put that thing on the table. This kind of falls into the same bucket, but it is so gateway friendly, that you get in it, you know what you're doing. And after each one of those games in the beginning, we'd be like, okay, I know where we went wrong, and we would learn from and evolve and figure out how to play it. Great title.
Yep. And those are our number 17. We're number 16, and I chose 51st State Master Set. Now, this was much higher on my list the last 50, last year. But there's just been so many good games that have come across and have kind of bumped it back. But it's still in my top 20. This is one by Portal Games. It's an engine builder set in post-apocalyptic, I want to say U.S. because one of the factions is Texas.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. And another one's New York. But it's just an amazing puzzle of building that engine up and not quite meanness because you do break other people's engines to try and make sure they don't stream ahead of you. But I just love the engine building from getting more workers to making deals so you have those steady income of resources and building your engine. So many different ways to get the victory points to win. So I really, really love this game, even though it's fallen a bit, but it is 51st State Master Set.
What I think is that the player interaction in 51st State it's important, but if it's the only thing you focus on, you're going to lose, right? You have to win with your engine, but you have to use player interaction to disrupt theirs enough so that you can gain the upper hand. Because this has one of those where once one player meets,
this one's a race to
25, I think, victory points, then end game begins, right? And so you kind of really have to keep things close and narrow until somebody reaches that final point, and then you make the last sprint.
Yeah, I said this when we talked about it last time, but I think Portal has mastered these engine building card games. There is so much depth in the same deck of cards over and over again, plus some extras you can throw in with the expansions. But there's just so many ways you can go about playing this one. Love it.
Great game. Mine is going to be a Stronghold game title, and that's Terraforming Mars. This is one that really stung me last year because we were in the midst of the Shelf of Shame, trying to clear the games that we hadn't played but owned. And so we only got to play this a couple of times. And man, I really want to play it some more. There's a lot more in that box that I want to explore. But even the base game is just so fun and engaging of taking, the area control over the surface of Mars, managing the temperature and waterfall and all of that. And just the different systems that come out and that you can build to have your tableau going, your engine going. Such a great game. The components could have been better, granted.
Sure.
But as I understand, that was in an effort to keep the costs down, so I can appreciate that. Really cool game, Terraforming Mars.
And we only got to play the base game of it, and we could play the enhanced version of starting off with a corporation, right? Then they had the expansions of Venus came out with that new map. So they're building on it, but in a way that I'm excited about, and I just want to get it to the table again and again. So great choice.
Yeah, the Hellas and Elysium expansion was just a new board with two different sides, new ways to play. That's how you do an expansion. Don't mess with the game.
Yeah.
Just put out something supplemental for it. My number 16 is going to be from Minion Games, and that's Manhattan Project Energy Empire. Crossover with this one on Joe, and I think as we go here, you're going to see a lot of these crossovers, kind of bunching up. She said a lot of good things about it. Basically, you represent a nation, and that nation gives you a special starting circumstance and a special circumstance under which you influence the United Nations, and that's going to score you points at the end based on how many you've got up. But as I've said time and time again on this list, I love worker placement, and this is a worker placement game. You have dice that represent the different kind of energy you generate. You roll those once a round, and it will give you a certain number of energy. You add that to your workers. You go out and place, and when you run out of workers, you roll your dice again and do it over and over again. I really enjoy this one. I like the fact that I can buy special buildings that come into my play area, and those are my buildings. It's got some of that engine building thing going on, plus a great little theme. So, number 16, Manhattan Project, Energy Empire.
And don't forget, you're also controlling your pollution, because, the more, like, the nuclear can downright destroy areas of your habitat. You have others that you choose whether or not it messes with your water or your land or your air pollution. And so you have to maintain that, because that's negative victory points at the end of the game if you don't keep the environment as clean as possible. Good choice.
Those are our number 16s. Number 15 is my first crossover with Joe this episode, and it's going to be Blood Bowl, the old classic by Games Workshop. I am a sucker for this game and have been for many, many years, probably decades now.
Yeah.
So it's fantasy football. Fantasy is a very loose term. It's football like you've never seen. Brutal combat football. So I think we've talked about it before, and I really enjoy it. Just it's a fun beer and pretzels board game for me. And it has minis to paint.
Oh yeah, and it's set in the Warhammer universe. So just so you know, those are the types of races that the teams will be made out of. Some of them are brute force. Some of them are more agility, so they're faster. It's a great way to choose a team that kind of meets your gameplay and have a really good time with pizza and pretzels.
Yeah. My number 15 is going to cross over with Chip from just a couple picks ago. And again, I kind of lumped these all together just like he did, but it's going to be the Pandemic family. But I found myself, since this one came out, when I speak about Pandemic, I'm talking about Pandemic Iberia. I felt like that one stepped it up. I liked the different, you can almost customize your difficulty in that, one of the variants you can play, each disease has characteristics of how it behaves. Maybe when there's an outbreak here, it puts 2 cubes in each adjacent city, or one of them will travel along the port, simulating it going out across the seas or whatever. I really enjoy that. Each of those 4 diseases, you can put one in there, you can put all 4 of them in there and just put it on crazy mode. I felt like, because it's very tactical, right? You can't really be strategic in Pandemic because everything's going to change with that card shuffle. I felt like this ramped up the tactical, and it ramped the enemy up in an interesting way. Not necessarily overwhelming, but in a really interesting way. So my number 15, it was 2 last year, Pandemic was. So going to be Pandemic Iberia at 15.
Well, what's really cool and different from the regular Pandemic is that you're not trying to cure any of these diseases. You're just trying to contain it and keep it under control. So
trying to research them.
Yes, so good choice. Well, for my number 15, I found out over time that I really kind of enjoyed the arcade MOBA style. So my number 15 is Rum and Bones. I really enjoy the fact that you pick your piratey faction of 5 special characters, Captain Bruiser and all that, and you're just trying to get to the other ship and meet your objectives. And you got these pirate MOBA-ing in the middle, in between, and they're basically just, fodder, but you've got to get past them. You got to control them so that they don't overwhelm you. And it's just nonstop fun. The first time that I played this with Lucas, this game was supposed to last
90 minutes.
Yeah, if that, 90 minutes. It lasted how many hours? Like 3?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 hour game, and that's only because we were having so much fun killing all the piratey minions that we completely forgot about the objectives and was just bashing each other back and forth. But it's a ton of fun, and there's so many different factions you can choose from. I just totally enjoy this game, Rum and Bones.
That's our number 15. At number 14, I've got a worker placement surprise game from Wizards of the Coast, and that's Lords of Waterdeep. Longtime D&D players, so instantly I was interested in the setting. I didn't really realize that what was going to be in that box was a worker placement game, because you figure it's going to be some kind of adventure game, right? You're making a D&D board game. But the surprising part was somehow Wizards put out an amazing worker placement game. It's a staple for me in that genre. It is the textbook definition of I place a worker and I get X thing. And I'm trying to collect those things in order to complete quests and score points. Those things you can play as blocks and not use your imagination, or they can be fighters and priests and wizards and clerics. That's how I prefer to think of it, so that makes this one for me a thematic game. I really enjoy it mechanically, especially when you add in the corruption mechanic from the expansion. I don't care to put both expansions together, and to me the other one, it was just kind of soft and fluffy, but the one that adds corruption, I thought made the game a whole lot of fun, because you can kind of be a little mean and work corruption onto other folks, and then try to get that tracked where each corruption marker is going to be worth an insane amount of negative points at the end of the game. So if you don't manage that, and they're tempting spaces to go to, right? There's an incredible amount of resources that I get from going to this space, and I just take one little corruption, but at the end of the game it might be -7 points or something like that. So I really enjoy Lords of Waterdeep.
I actually think that is a good example of a worker placement gateway.
Yeah.
Yes,
it is. Sure.
Because,
absolutely.
The mechanics are really simple. There's no weird trickery to it. It's just, like you said, place it here, get this. Place it here, get this. So definitely a gateway game for worker placement.
Yeah, my favorite part of Lords of Waterdeep is having that just choice building come up in the building area and being able to snag it. Because the player built buildings give the owner a reward if another player selects it, right? And you get
so you like being a slumlord.
You get that you get that choice building, and everybody is jumping on it, and you're like, yeah, that's right. Bring in the victory points or bring in the extra stuff. But to your point about, the blocks being the characters and stuff, as Eric Summerer says on the Dice Tower, gather round, children. In the days of early Dungeons and Dragons, there were no maps. There were no battle maps. There were no miniatures. Right. No matter what Stranger Things will have you believe. We played the games in our minds. And so, to me, I can easily say, oh, the white cube is my cleric. So, or you can get the, if you just have to have it, you can get the little meeple guys that look like it. But Lords of Waterdeep's a great game.
Well, for my number 14, that's what we're on, 14? For my number 14, I chose Marvel Legendary. So as we're talking about gateway games, I think this is a really good one too. Thematically, it's heroes, and you're trying to beat scenarios and masterminds, and you're basically drafting cards to do it. And it's simple, it's fun, it's easy for a younger group to get in and play with you, so it's definitely family friendly. I just enjoy it every single time it comes to the table, and so that's why I chose Marvel Legendary.
If I remember correctly, our first exposure to deck building was DC deck building.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
And I really liked that game. Now, I still do. I think it's a great game. And I think there for the longest time I was a little bit biased because it was our first against Legendary. But Legendary has really grown on me because of the board and the story, the objective cards. Because DC is great and it's fun. It's a quick game, easy to play. But essentially, you're always fighting these guys. You know what's coming up. With Marvel, you have so much more variety. Not only can you tailor the superheroes, that are going to come out, but the scenario itself, we've got a stack of those cards. We haven't even come close to going through all of them. No. And we've played this game a number of times. So, Legendary is a really great game, and I can really appreciate it.
I might have something more to say on that one later.
Ooh, spoiler.
14 for me is going to be my back-to-back crossover with Jolene, and that is the Golden Ages. Now, I know I give you a lot of grief for not liking Clash of Cultures, but I will say that if you had to pick a Civ builder that you liked, Golden Ages is a great one to pick.
I agree.
There's a lot more exploration, to me anyway, the way that I see it. There's a lot more exploration in this game of uncovering or placing map tiles to build this map and growing out your civilization from there. I just like how that works. A couple expansions for it make it even better, but don't really, they don't make it cumbersome. Right. Fit in very well, and it's just an all around good Euro Civ builder.
I love that game, especially the we're building the map, right? And you expand from your little area. I don't know. It's really fun. It's simple, and I enjoy the heck out of it.
That's our number 14s.
So number 13, I chose a Game of Thrones living card game.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I love this game. I love the books and the TV show of A Game of Thrones. So the Song of Fire and Ice, love that whole thing. So I'm really into the storyline and the characters. So when they made this, and it's the second edition that I'm talking about, because they really streamlined it there, being able to put together a deck of, be it wolves and the Starks or the Lannisters, and just choosing your faction, choosing your family, and going into all out war. And it's not like miniatures out of thing and you're fighting each other. This is more you're using political power, because you're using cards and you're using money, because that's a really big what you have to have in order to succeed well is you got to have coin. But playing those cards at the right time to harness those victory points. It's just, I absolutely love the political intrigue in the whole thing. So that's my choice for number 13, Game of Thrones living card game.
I mean, my sadistic sense of humor, but playing Magic for so long, it was like, okay, I kill your Shivan Dragon. Oh, and next turn he brings another one right back out. I kill him again. He brings another one right back out, right? There's something about this game where the guy could have put 4 Jaime Lannisters in his deck. If I kill him right off the bat, those other 3 are just useless in his deck. He can't even bring them back out. I don't know. I just like that twist on a card game.
That permanent is permanent. Yep.
Well, that particular mechanic is what makes this one incredibly thematic because those characters die.
My number 13 is going to be, growing up, there were 2 gentlemen that really made an impression on me, Mr. Bartles and Mr. James. So my title is going to be Vinos, the winemaking on an industrial scale board game. And, I don't want to disparage viticulture because I really enjoy that game too. And we talked about that in earlier episodes. To me, viticulture is I'm running a single winery and really getting into what happens throughout the year in that. With Vinos, it's more I'm running a wine empire. I'm making wine. I'm trying to market my wine at a fair and get accolades there. I'm trying to ship it off overseas. I'm trying to sell it locally. I'm doing all these things, and it's the economic side of the game that viticulture doesn't have so much economics as Vinos does, right? And to me, and I guess I appreciate that a little bit more. But both are great titles. Vinos just comes in for me at number, what are we on, 13?
Well, it's the exporting and you're trying to, and that hurts in some ways, but it's also really good victory points. But then those barrels are gone, right? So, and then you have all the different vineyards, and depending on what vineyard you choose, there's special properties because it comes from that part of Italy. So it's definitely a good game. It's definitely Euro.
Yes.
Way more so, I think, than viticulture.
It's a lot more complex than viticulture, and that's not a negative. It's just,
it
is what it is. You have a lot more stuff to keep track of.
Be tall, Lacerda, you really can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
My number 13 is from another one from Portal Games, who, I feel like at this point they should just set up auto debit. If they put something out, just take my money. But this one is Legacy: The Testament of Duke de Crecy.
Wow.
And in this one, you are building out your family's legacy. And when you open the box, there's a letter in there from Duke de Crecy telling you that, he operated in the shadows his whole life. He made choices and pulled strings so that others would succeed. The problem with that is he has no legacy. He did it all in silent, and, he's going to die and no one's going to know his name. So he's encouraging you to go out and build your legacy. So you're literally trying to have kids and marry them off to rich and powerful people and build mansions and do all of these things over the course of 3 generations to build up your legacy. And, let's throw the theme out the window for a minute, score the most points at the end of the game. So overall, it's a great little package that I really enjoy. I don't even know what kind of game you would call this. Maybe tableau building. I don't really know what category you'd put it into other than the category of a ton of fun.
Is it set collection? Or?
To a degree. I mean, you're trying to get these things, and some of them are limited, right? There can only be so many mansions that are built or whatnot. I don't know. But it is a ton of fun. Legacy: The Testament of Duke de Crecy.
2 things on that. One, wow, that is really high on your list.
How you love that?
I knew that you really enjoyed that game, but I did not expect it to be that high. Wow. Another thing about it is it's a really, really, really good game, and it is when you're playing it and you're on the last turn and you're like, no, I need just one more turn. And that's what happened to me. I was like, I got this set for the next round. There is not a next round. No. So that's a really good game. Really good.
Those are our number 13s. my number 12, it's a game that we've recently come to know, and that is Newsfjord. My first Uwe Rosenberg title, and man, oh man, I like this game. I just want to play some more of his titles for it. Essentially, you're running a fishing village and trying to acquire elders to give you advice, more ships to go out and get more fish, feed a bunch of people, and gain a bunch of points. All while building some buildings to give you some special abilities that can happen in your village. And it's just, once my head figured out kind of the flow of it, boy, it really clicked and really became a really cool game. And there's, again, it's one of these with a lot of depth. There's a lot more options that we can add to it with the different cards that'll come up throughout play and things like that. So, Newsfjord, I'm very happy with that one.
Well, it's on the lighter side of what we normally see from Uwe, but it has all of the wonderful tidbits that we love from him. So I think it's on the lighter side, but I thoroughly enjoy it. Definitely.
I don't know if it's so much lighter as it's less tense. Okay. And maybe that makes you feel that way because you're not stressing about feeding my people or whatever, right? There aren't any of those big hammers that are going to drop if you don't do X, right? Which he's so known for. That's true. Maybe that's why it feels lighter to you. Mm-hmm. It's a cool game. I was really looking forward to this, and we got to try it at BGG Con last year. That's another one of his games that I really like, but I think it's the game of his that I like the least that I've played. So, I'd really like to get some of those others in front of you because if you liked Newsfjord, I think you'll really like them.
Yeah, probably will.
My number 12, this is interesting because while you were talking, I was wondering if Newsfjord was mobbed up because you have the elders and you've got to feed them fish every turn when you get your shipment in. They got to get their taste and everything. So it kind of made me wonder if Newsfjord was one of those places. And my number 12 is The Godfather, Corleone's Empire. So, and ironically enough, before we filmed, I was downstairs watching The Godfather. But this one is from Eric Lang and Simon. So the production's great. You all know that I'm an Eric Lang fan most of the time. And this one is a worker placement game with area control and a theme that I adore. I don't really know what else I've got to put into that. I just absolutely love Godfather, Corleone's Empire.
I really like the extra twists that they put in there of the suitcases. Mm-hmm. Because unless you put some of your stash away for, at the end of the game, that's your victory points. And if you don't get them into the suitcase, then you're not going to have anything.
You don't get that money clean. It don't count.
That's right. You got to launder it and get it done.
I think if I had to deal with the mafia, I would want to deal with Scandinavian mafia. I feel like they wouldn't really...
Would that be the Viking mafia?
No, I think the Vikings have passed. I think now they're more like, environmentalist mafia. I think instead of offing you, they would just knit you a subpar toboggan or something. Give you a light sweater or something.
Just keep them in fish, and they'll be all right.
Yeah.
What you got, Joe?
Okay. Well, last time at number 13, you chose a legacy game. Mine's sort of like that. What I chose was Elysium. You are building up your legend using action selection, and you've got your hand of cards, and they all have special powers when you play them and you put them down. But as soon as you decide to put them in the Elysium for victory points at the end of the game, kind of like the suitcase in Corleone's Empire, once you put them in your Elysium, you can't use their special power anymore. They're victory points. So it's that balance of trying to figure out when do I trigger those victory points versus using that special power. And they're usually pretty darn good ones too. So that's my choice, Elysium.
There's some number of gods in that box. I can't remember the number. And you use X number of them each game. So you're going to have a little bit of a different variety every time you play. And you're basically set collecting to form your little legend, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this one's really interesting. I like the columns. And you go to buy a card and you have to sacrifice one of your columns to buy that card. And you have to be careful because let's say I put my yellow one out there, well now if a card out there requires a yellow column, I'm not going to be able to get that. I didn't have to spend my yellow one if I bought a yellow card, But I've got to really think about what's out there, what I might be wanting, and which columns I get rid of. And I think there's a neat puzzle there.
Oh,
I
yeah,
like that
definitely.
Those are our number 12s.
I'm going to kick off number 11 with Yokohama. This one is Chip just talked about Newsfjord. This is another kind of, fishing village kind of place, but you're shipping and receiving goods, and you're trying to get your goods through customs, or you're making donations to the church to get victory points. But the interesting thing here is you're the owner of this company, and you have employees, which are little tiny meeples. And you would put them out on the board, gaining influence in the different regions, and it's an upside down triangle that are all different locations, essentially worker placement locations. And then you have a big meeple, which is the president of your company. He kind of represents you, and he's going to move around the board, and wherever he stops, that's the action you'll carry out. And the amount of goods you get, or the strength of the action, or whatever, is going to be modified by the amount of influence you have there. Him plus employees, and you can even build buildings out onto the board, which will give you even more influence. And then however much you've got, you get a reward, but he can only move through a path where he has employees. Mm-hmm. So if I need to get him over here to this space, I've got to draw a line, basically, with employees so that he can go through that area and stop there, get your goods. There's objectives. You fill orders, basically, shipping out your goods. There's technologies that you buy that'll kind of give you some of them will give you a benefit during game, some will give you an in-game scoring condition, all of these things. When I saw the Kickstarter for this one, you look at the picture and you go, "Oh my God, what is that?" Mm-hmm. It had metal coins, which just, I wasn't going to back it, but the metal coin thing just gets me. I love them
every time.
So it suckered me into it. But when you put it out on the table, you're like, "Wait a minute! It's not as intimidating now that I've got it in front of me as it was in the picture." And once you start playing, it's incredibly simple to play. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot to do. There's a lot of depth in that playing, so I think that makes a good game. It's incredibly simple to play, but impossible to master type deal. Yeah. So that's why I like Yokohama.
Well, it's going to stay fresh too, because the triangle that you build at the beginning, it's modular. So there's other locations that might come up, and where it was the fishing wharf down here is now up here, and then this one right here, it wasn't even in the game the last time we played. Right. So there's a lot of freshness and replayability. So yeah, that's a good one. For my number 11, it did not make the top 10. It just missed it, and that is Pandemic.
Oh, okay. There we go.
My favorite of that group, and like I said, we played regular Pandemic for a very long time. We binged through Legacy 1, right? We played Cthulhu. But my favorite out of all of them is Iberia. And I think the reason that is it's charming on top of having that same pandemic roots. You still have you're playing a special character. You're still trying to control the diseases. They add a port, jumping from port to port. They've added railroad tracks where there's a railway man and he's building railroad tracks so you can get from one city to the next faster. There's just, and it's regional too. Like you can put down water to help purify the region, but it affects multiple cities. So there's just so much more to it, and it fit the time that the game is set so well. So that's why I picked Iberia as my number 11 pandemic game.
So Cthulhu gets no love.
And I like that version, but I think it'd be the least of them.
Well, my number 11 is going to give Cthulhu some love. And out of all of the Arkham games, Cthulhu games, this one is one of my very favorites. That is Eldritch Horror. For the large map, exploration, kind of moving around, dudes on a map, Cthulhu game, this is my favorite one, man. It gives me such a feeling of Indiana Jones when I play it. It's got that Lovecraft horror element. And there's a lot in the box. You get quite a few old ones to cycle through. So, you can have quite a few different games. The locations have different events that can take place. And there is no shortage of expansions for this game because it's a Fantasy Flight title. And they love expansions. So, But where this one I think kind of differs from Arkham, the predecessor, is Arkham kind of grew to this point and people would add every expansion to it. Eldritch is not really set up that way. It's not meant for you to add every large expansion to the game. It's meant for you to pick one large expansion if you want to play with it and put it on it. And so if you want to play with Mountains of Madness, put that there. If you want to play with, any of the others, you select one and play with that. But it's really, really fun. And they modified Arkham enough for me. Everything that I kind of had nitpicks about in Arkham got fixed in Eldritch Horrors. So I really suggest it for anybody who wants to give those games a try.
It is definitely sprawling, though. It's a table hog. And that may be the only reason we don't do more than one expansion at a time, because we just don't have the table room for it all.
This is the game that I measure all other exploration, expedition, adventure type games by. This one here.
Yeah.
If you make me feel like I do when I'm playing this, you're a good game. If you don't, you're not.
Yeah.
That's going to be our 20 through 11. There's one episode left, our top 10 favorite games, 2018 edition, and we'll be back with that one very soon. Until then, for Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Lucas.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Chip. Don't forget to subscribe.